All right, so in this section here, we are going to talk a little bit about limitations and sort of tips and tricks and best practices and stuff like that. And I'll show you a little bit how you can deal with tricky situations. So first of all, when you're dealing with the toolkit, you don't have to use this template. You can build this yourself if you want. You also don't need to use the switcher if you don't want to. You can stack these on top of each other and do the work inside of them if you want to. One thing to keep in mind when dealing with these context nodes is that if you drag and drop them, that does work, but the thumbnail will get broken when you do. And you can fix that by sort of checking and unchecking it, and it will come back, or reselect shots. But that's something to be aware of if you're confused why you don't see thumbnails. Sometimes if you're seeing breaks or crashes, then sometimes these thumbnails will look broken or not be there, and you can do the same thing, the same trick with just thumbnails on off, or you can set the project again and all thumbnails should restore. Another thing when you're outputting, so when you're outputting your shots for real, you have the option to do submit or submit in background, and if you do submit, it will lock your session. This is what we've done, with all the exports that we've done. This works the same for renders, but if you want to have to be able to see sort of in the render scheduler what is going on, you can do submit in background, and then all these files will be, this file that you are working in will be versioned up 7 times, and they will pop up here and you will see the percentage and stuff like that. The render time is the same in both scenarios. So it's up to you how to use it. Also a good tip when you're submitting renders or simulations and stuff like that. If you're struggling with memory and stuff like that, you can close down the scene viewer and everything will go a little bit faster. So that's a good tip as well. Another thing we will talk about is how the files will come out. And so if you look in the folders, every publish is called output. And this is a little bit unusual. Most of the time, the output will have the entire path name and stuff like that in it. But there's a good reason for this. So when you are updating versions in your file nodes and stuff like that, you don't have to browse to a new asset. All you need to do is change the version number in the path. And so to illustrate this, I'm just going to open our publish history here, and we'll do this butterfly look dev here. I'm going to bring that in to demonstrate. I'll just do the first one. All right, so if we look at the path here, so if you wanted to manually update this and the output was containing the entire path as well, you would have to update it in several places or select it. But here you can actually, if you just do a backspace here, it will pop up the versions that's in the folder, and so then you can very quickly select that, and you have the output for that one. Another reason for it is due to these temporary files. So when you add the things on the stage, sort of like SOP crates and stuff like that, or COPS networks with textures in them, which you connect with a quick material, those files needs to be saved somewhere, and they will usually be saved in a stage like this. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how you can sort of override things in the scene. So here we have our scene, and if we go to our publish history, and typically if you have the preview switcher open here as well, you'll be able to check this one, so you can see what is currently loaded, and so we can see all the layers and animations and stuff that has been loaded here. And you have a few options if you don't want it to load. So we have our water here in the background, and we can sort of see the waves in there. And if let's say we don't want this FX, maybe the waves was way too big or something, and it sort of destroys everything, we can click to ignore this, and now we should see no waves over there. And now it's just the material on the plane from layout. And so this is a good way to sort of troubleshoot things, and you can basically sort of ignore everything in your scene. Where we can ignore the animation here for the butterfly and everything. And when you ignore it, it will try to load the previous version of it. This ignore list is only for this tree, so everything that's supposed to be ignored is stored within the base node. And so this is a good way to sort of troubleshoot things. If you have exported something yourself and you're like, oh no, wait, that came out all broken, or maybe you do have something that is really broken that can't be used, you can also do reject. And so what happens when you do reject is that this folder for the FX main border for this shot. We'll see that this file has now been renamed to reject, which means that nothing will load it. And it is clear if you share these files that this file is rejected. And you can always unreject things as well. So those are two tools. You can also see in the assets, you can see that there is like included. And when it says loaded, that means that the base node is loading these as sublayers. But within those sublayers, there are assets and stuff. And so that's why it says included, because these assets are being included. We can see here that there is a new butterfly asset that is not included. And so we have no direct way here when we're in Light to update this. The animator would have to go into their scene and update the asset and publish it. And sometimes that is not what you want. Sometimes you want to override this and have this. And so what you can do is we can copy this as a sublayer. And if we just look at this, this one has a nice purple hue. So if we throw that into the tree here, and we go back, we can see that this has updated. The system is sort of smart enough to realize that there is no transform on the model, so it won't destroy your animation, for instance. However, if you have an animation that is baked, that is coming, where the model is included in the animation, you might have a problem where this one overrides the animation. And what you can do then is that in these sublayer nodes, if you go to composition, you can actually select where in the stack you want it. So by default, it's always set to the top. But you can go to the specific index here, and we can basically walk this back. And now we are below the animation layer, for instance. And so you can sort of walk it back through the layer stack to find a position where it would work, but not override things and stuff like that. So a little bit about how things are being updated. When you put down a base node, it will create a timestamp and it will allow everything to get loaded up until that point. If you want to update after that, you want to do the update all button or go into the publish history to granularly set that new timestamp. And we talked a little bit before about that you can sort of drag this slider and see what's new and not. You can step this slider hourly by pressing each side here. You can also press this to put in a custom date. And so typically how you would update things might be that you go in and you apply the new date, like so, and you check your scenes. And if you're not happy, then you can revert the date. And then you go into the files where you weren't really happy, and you can choose to lock that date down. And this date, if you add it to several context nodes containing the same shots, it will try to pick the lowest or oldest date. And typically, you can use this with the preview switcher as well, and check this current context, and then you can see exactly what's being loaded per shot, and have that control. We've also talked about copying the nodes. And you can actually do that for several files and just copy sublayers and then you can basically troubleshoot the entire stack on your own if you want. So that's a good tip. And speaking of selecting, in all of these windows where you can select, multi-select, you can also just drag, which is a handy, quick feature. And if you choose to lock things down like this, you don't, if you want to change this date, you don't actually have to put in the full date, it will fill in the rest for you. So if you would do something like that, it would still work. So together with that and ignoring things and rejecting things, you have a wide range of options to control your scenes, hopefully. So let's talk about some limitations with stacking. So we talked about the context nodes before, that you can sort of stack them after each other like this. It doesn't need to use the switcher. The switcher is beneficial because you can have this local preview when you jump between shots, which is practical. But you don't have to use it. They are a little bit sensitive in how they work. So we talked about that. If you do have a switch, it needs to have some sort of pass-through if you're gonna break out stuff like that. And if you would find yourself to have a context node here and here that sort of have the same shot in them, the context switcher will be very confused, and it will basically select the first one or the last one. You also cannot sort of stack context like this or add switches inside of a switch loop. That will also cause mayhem. The output node, however, is much more flexible in that manner. So we talked about how the output node can use things inside of it to activate and stuff like that. And we talked about it can be below and it can be up here and stuff like that. The context node or the output nodes can also be placed in shots like this. If you just want to have outputs for a particular branch, for instance, that can be done. And because these are basically just turning on and off, you have the ability to basically do a reference copy, and you could use that in here as well. And because these have the same name, they will be both activated, and you can use that to customize even further. So it's a very flexible node in that sense. Another thing you can do with the outputs is to override the departments. So sometimes you don't want to specifically set up all these departments. Maybe you're just a generalist and you want to do everything in one tree, and that's totally okay too. And so if you have some sort of simulation, let's say, that you want to output, and you're working with everything in Light, so there are no other departments per se, you can still choose to override the base department and export the FX to the FX department, for instance. And because these are only active once they are selected in the preview switcher or during render, you can essentially push that out. And when you choose to update later, you can update to include that in your FX department that is one layer below you. And so you can sort of use it as to offload. And because it's only active when it's specifically told to be active, this won't trigger all the time. So it won't matter if the same FX is loaded in the scene. You do have to be a little bit careful though if you want to export it again, because now the FX is loaded. So use with caution, but it is a possibility. All right. I also promised to tell you guys how to make a USD zip file, and it's very simple. So if we grab a path from somewhere, maybe this look the butterfly here, and we'll just copy as path. If you create a ROP network here, and we'll jump in and you can search for zip, you will get this USD zip. And I can either browse to a file, or in this case, just paste this in. And for the output file, you can browse to save it somewhere, or just do this. And once you render this, you will get a baked USD file with all the references, materials, and everything that you can send. It will be fully self-contained. All right, I think that mostly wraps everything up. And hopefully you have gotten a good sense of how this toolkit can be used and what the benefits are and stuff like that. And with the launch of this toolkit, I'm also launching sort of a companion Patreon. And the toolkit itself will always be free without the need for signing up or anything like that. If you want to support what I do and get all kinds of Solaris and USD and toolkit training, custom help, and epic tools for Solaris and COPs and stuff like that I'm creating, and you want to get involved with this, then feel free to sign up. I'd love to have you. And I'm going to talk a lot about the industry as a whole and how to survive in the VFX industry and what the future may hold with AI tools and stuff like that. And you can find it on patreon.com/oldandgray, which I am. And if you're a business and you want something like this for your needs, or connect to FTrack and stuff like that, or help training your artists, then we can absolutely do that. So give me a shout. And so I think we're gonna wrap up there. And thank you so much for staying with me through this video series. And hopefully there aren't too many bugs in the toolkit. But if you find them, then send them my way and I'll take care of them. All right. Have a great day.